funny, by the way. You can tell what's important to you. You should pay attention to what you're paying attention to. No matter what you're doing in life, even as you're sitting here right now, you pay attention to what you're paying attention to. Because you know what's important to you based off of what it is that you're paying attention to. Your thoughts can go places, but at some point you can consciously decide where you're going to focus your thoughts, but also unconsciously. If you're trying to think about, think about like your math class. When you're in math class, and then your mind starts going in different directions, pay attention to where your mind goes, and what you start to think about, and where your thoughts dwell, because that's how you know what's important to you. But here's the thing, man. Someday you're going to have children, and you're going to be the center of their explored world. Where do you want that center to be? What stage of life do you want that center to be? Where do you want that to be? A better place? A more mature place? Whatever that means, once we figure that out. But first you have to realize that there is something else. That takes faith. That takes sacrifice. That will be for another day. Are there any foods that your mom makes, like specific to your mom, that you think of as like, this is the way my mom makes it?
But I can think of what my dad makes.
Okay, so for example, with the dad then.
Sexist.
Oh, what a good person for pointing out an ism. Wow, wonderful. Almost made it through the day without being a victim. So for example, so I'm thinking of it then is that like with dad, like let's say that your dad makes something or your mom makes something that is specific to, like you learn how to make it from them. And then they put a certain ingredient in there. And then if nobody else puts the ingredient in there, it's not that they're making it differently, they're making it wrong. You know what I mean? Like, because that's how you're used to it being. And you can go to every restaurant, you can go to everybody else's family. If your parents were the ones who made it a certain way, we start to think like that's the way it's supposed to be. And nothing else is going to be as good because there's maybe a type of a nostalgia that's connected to it. My point is that we learn a lot. Like we get indoctrinated a lot as kids. I don't mean indoctrinated in a bad way. I just mean it in the purest form. We get indoctrinated in how it is we're supposed to talk, how it is that we're supposed to behave, even down to how we're supposed to prepare foods. And yet, for some reason, we think that watching our parents interact and thinking, wow, I don't want to do it that way, is somehow different. Because it's one thing to say, I don't want to argue like my parents did. It's another thing to understand how not to do that. In other words, how to resolve conflict without yelling and fighting and all that. And then, like we were saying earlier, a lot of times we'll find a way to imitate that behavior. We'll just have different reasons for why we do it, perhaps. It's funny, by the way, you can tell what's important to you. You should pay attention to what you're paying attention to. No matter what you're doing in life, even as you're sitting here right now, you pay attention to what you're paying attention to. Because you know what's important to you based off of what it is that you're paying attention to. Your thoughts can go places, but at some point you can consciously decide where you're going to focus your thoughts, but also unconsciously. If you're trying to think about, think about like your math class. When you're in math class, and then your mind starts going in different directions, pay attention to where your mind goes, and what you start to think about, and where your thoughts dwell, because that's how you know what's important to you. And then, by the way, that's important because it clarifies our expectations. If you're in a class and you're not paying attention to the class, then it's a weird thing then to complain about the grades that we get. It's an even stranger thing someday if you ever expect your children to pay attention in class. How on earth can you possibly raise children who pay attention in class when you don't do it yourself? You'll accept it because you're going to have to justify it in some way. I mean, if you go through school and you essentially waste 12 years of your life, in your own mind you wasted 12 years of your life, but in actuality you probably just wasted 12 years of opportunities. It's going to be very difficult to then afterwards tell your children, oh, yeah, school is important. Even if you say it with your mouth, you're going to demonstrate it differently with your actions. You aren't going to monitor them as closely as you should. And yes, the word in there, should. You're not going to check up on them with their homework. And in fact, the really embarrassing thing is going to happen. You're going to be an adult and you won't be able to help them with their homework. And if you don't think that that messes with an adult, you've got things severely wrong. If they're adults in your life and they can't help you with your homework, that means something. That means something. And if you got adults who can help you with your homework, that means something. And I say this not because it's going to make you popular, because I understand this is going to piss a lot of people off, but I say it because it's true. Because it's true. And this is where we talk about where it is that we learn our modeling from. It isn't always conscious. It isn't always the person, what the person tells us. It's what we see. And then we get comfortable with the things that we see, and the things that we see form our expectations. If you never encounter couples who actually talk rather than yell and scream, well, then why on earth would it ever occur to you to talk rather than yell and scream? And how would you ever even know how to do it unless you can see people do it? It's just one of the many, 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 many reasons that reading is so important, because it gives you access to experiences that you don't have directly. And that could be one of them. Others, I missed some. No? Yeah, guilt's a hard one, and feeling silly is a hard one, because if you feel silly about something that you did, then that means that you're going to be less likely to try it in the future. And so if you're going to be less likely to try it in the future, then that almost suggests that you didn't learn anything from it. So in other words, what you hopefully learned from it was why you failed, why things went badly, so that you can fix it and do better in the future. And that's why guilt is such an important thing. People will say oh, you shouldn't feel guilty about the things that you do. If you don't feel guilty about anything you've ever done, you're either a psychopath or you're a liar, because all of us have done things that we should feel guilty about. Unless, of course, you were, going back earlier, we were raised in an environment where we were kind of taught never to feel guilt about anything. But guilt's a really important motive. Guilt's a really important motive. If you've done something terrible, but when you do something terrible, if you have absolutely no guilt at all, again, we can call you a psychopath or a narcissist, a person who feels like they can do no wrong. And if that's how you feel, that means you can't possibly grow, because guilt is one of those emotions that causes you to grow. I did this terrible thing. I shouldn't have done it. I feel bad about it. And so therefore, next time that opportunity comes up, it should stop you from doing it again. Because even if it's not just because you realize it's wrong because you don't want to hurt the other person, but the more central thing of, it makes me feel bad to have done this. I don't want to feel that way again. But on the same token, you don't want to have so much guilt that, last year somebody actually mentioned it as guilt tripping. You also don't want to feel so bad about what you've done that you now become incapable of acting in the future. Oh, I feel so terrible about it. I'm so stupid, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, I'm a piece of crap, I don't deserve to be happy. Oh, I just don't. You just go so far that now it stops you from behaving properly, because it stops you from behaving. You want your guilt to motivate proper life. You don't want your guilt to be so severe that it stops you from living. You want to have a proper reaction, which is that midpoint that we talked a lot about first semester with Aristotle's doctrine of the mean. You don't want to be so courageous that you're reckless. You don't want to lack so much courage that you're a coward. You want to be courageous. It's that midpoint right there. Every virtue is that midpoint between two vices on opposite extremes. So yeah, feel guilty about it, but try as best as you can to not let it haunt you. And guilt, silliness, I just mean you can feel so dumb for having tried something that then you're not willing to try it again in the future. And shyness is nice, as I've been told, but shyness can stop you from doing the things in life that you want to do. And coyness is nice. It's when you pretend to be shy. Coyness is nice, but coyness can stop you from doing the things in life that you want to. You shouldn't let it stop you from trying those things. Instead, they should be things that we use to help us perform those things. In other words, if you're so shy, use that as a kind of a motivator to overcome something. That way you have a sense of accomplishment. Not only did I try it, but I also overcame that thing that was holding me back. And if you're shy, there's nothing wrong with being shy. It isn't like you have to fix that personality thing. But you should recognize that it is stopping you from doing the things that you want to do. It's like being an introvert. If you're introverted, there's nothing wrong with being an introvert. But being an introvert will stop you from doing things in life that you want to do. And all of our research shows that extroverts do better in life than introverts.
Networking?
I'm sorry?
Is it because of networking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And who wants to talk to the weird person who's in the corner who's keeping to themselves? You don't get, I'm not saying in here. I'm saying that everyone's like, everyone's started looking around. And be nice to that guy, because you never know, right? I'm always nice to the quiet kid. You guys are welcome. So you can use your guilt to motivate proper action. You can use that desire to overcome your introversion. Something I tell you guys, I don't know if you guys believe me, but I'm an extreme introvert, man. If I'm not here talking in front of you, and I'm quiet doing my thing, man. I mean, especially when I leave here, I spend all day talking here. The last thing in the world I want to do is go home and talk. The last thing I want to do is go anywhere else and teach. I'm extremely introverted. If you guys ever see me out in public, you may not even notice me. But if you do, I'm not out there just like, hey guys, life is suffering. I'm not at Walmart telling everybody that you don't know what you don't know. So what do I do? Why do I do this? Because I don't know, this is better than, what? How are you? Because this is way better than working in a cubicle. I mean, what's the alternative? I'm gonna go be an accountant? Oh, fuck that. That's why I come up here. That's the grand comedy that the universe played on me. They're like, let's make him an extreme introvert. Oh, and then we'll give him a desire to teach. Now let's see how it works out. And I could not do this, but at some point, I mean, stop me if you've heard this before. The people at Walmart may have just heard it, but life is suffering. And we don't get to choose not to suffer, but we can choose what we're going to suffer for. And that's freedom. I can suffer for coming up here and saying things like, good afternoon. That's why I like you guys. If I say good afternoon, what do you guys say? I say, we'll try it. Good afternoon, guys. How you guys doing today?
How about you?
That's fantastic, dude. My third period was by you realize it took all of my spirit to come together to go, how are you guys doing today? It takes everything to come together, and you have like one person who's like, fine, and like one person you hear mutter, you suck, or something. At least I imagine that anyway. But you can, even if you're an introvert, you can overcome that introversion by pretending to be an introvert, by pretending to be an extrovert. And if you pretend enough, you can get better at it. You'll be awkward first, of course. But if you're an extrovert, you're probably going to do better in life. Extroverts tend to do better in life. People like extroverts. They're more fun to be around. The person who you're like, how are you doing today? And they're like, fine. All right, good talk. Whereas, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm great. How are you doing today? Oh, I'm doing all right. Oh my God, how is it? And they're more, I want to say communicative. That's not like a disease. They communicate more. They're more fun to be around. We like them more. Yeah. How does a person become aware though that there is a difference or a possibility of a difference? You have to be exposed to it.
Yeah.
That's the nefarious part. If you're never exposed to it, how would you know better? How would you know differently?
You won't.
Yeah. That's why the media that we take in is so important. If you're taking in media that reflects your environment, you really think that the whole world looks like that. If your Twitter account, if your TikTok resembles where you're growing up, you think the whole world looks like that. And then you never know there's a difference. You never know that there's a possibility of going to a college, of going to a job that you never would have thought possible. And so a big part, you're absolutely right, is that you have to be able to step outside of where you presently are just to go out there and investigate what else might be out there. And this is why it's so important. And this is that nefarious part of it all. If you go to the beach and you see like a toddler, however old this is, and you see them for maybe it's like their first time going to the beach or anywhere actually. I guess you can see this at the mall too, but I think of it at the beach because I saw this where I'm guessing a toddler. He still walked like a gorilla, he walked like little gorillas, and he walks away from his parents, and he looks back and he says he checks to see where his dad is and wants to make sure he can still see his parents, and then he wanders off a little bit more and he can still check, As long as he still has that line of sight, there's a sense there where even if he's outside of his comfort zone, he's outside of his explored area, because your parents represent the center of your explored universe, the center of your explored world. And then you can see, though, that some kids never get farther away than 20 feet or 30 feet before they end up heading back. And those are the kids who are never going to see the differences in life, because they're never going to expand themselves beyond that immediate line of sight of where they came from. And you might think, like, is it really that deep? Yes. Yes, it is. Just like you can see those kids who will see where their parents are, check, and then take off and try to get as far away from them as possible. Not because they want to get away from their parents, but because then their parents chase them and they have fun doing it and they think it's hilarious. You know? So then they run away as far as they can. They think it's hilarious. Parents catch them, but that's a kid who's very secure with exploring. That's the kid who's going to be like, who's going to be in my class and they're going to say, you know, Scout, I applied to a school in Italy as this actually happened. A school in Italy? Yeah. Do you speak Italian? No. No, but they teach classes in English and they offer classes in Italian. So the first 2 years you take classes in English, and after that you take classes in Italian. So I'm going to have 2 years to learn it. If I'm living there, I think I'll learn it. I think I'll learn Italian. Have you ever tried Italian before? You mean food? No, the language. No. But that's the person who sits and goes, why not? That's the kid who probably ran away from their parents when they were younger, not because they wanted to get away from their parents, but because they were so secure in that relationship that they now have come to believe that they can do anything. And then those parents were also not the parents who pulled them back and said, listen, I know you got accepted to an Italian university and that this is the chance of a lifetime, but have you thought about San Diego State? Because I would miss you if you were gone that far. You know, you can miss your children. Of course, you can miss your parents, but why are you missing them? Because you're not where the opportunities are. You have to make that choice. Stop me if you've heard it before. Life is suffering. You can suffer for missing your family for a few years, or you can suffer for having missed those opportunities for the rest of your life and the possibilities of what could have been. So, miss them. Don't miss them so little that you lose their phone numbers and never talk to them again. Don't miss them so much that it stops you from exploring your universe, exploring your world. Because ideally, as you grow older, of course, your parents are the center of your explored world, as I just said. But here's the thing, man. Someday you're going to have children, and they're going to be the center of their explored world. Where do you want that center to be? What stage of life do you want that center to be? Where do you want that to be? A better place? A more mature place? Whatever that means, once we figure that out. But first, you have to realize that there is something else. That takes faith. That takes sacrifice. That will be for another day. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?